I have heard many terrible things over the years. One piece of advice remains bothersome. Early in my grief journey, and on different occasions, a few different people said, "Welcome to Living Life in Color Again, the podcast for anyone who has lost a loved one to homicide." I'm your host, Kimberly Christopher. Can I have a moment to be transparent? I wasn't really feeling it this morning. I was in a bit of a funk, and I was in my head a little bit too much, heading toward worrying about things outside of my control. I checked the forecast and saw that the sun would replace the dense fog of early morning, so I decided to get outside around lunchtime to get some sunshine on my face. As I knew it would, being in the sunlight boosted my mood. During my walk, I thought about all of the unhelpful advice that I've received along my grief journey. While I have heard many terrible things over the years, one piece of advice remains bothersome. Early in my grief journey, and on different occasions, a few different people said to me, "This pain isn't for you. This isn't about you. It's to help others." This pain isn't for you. It's to help others. The suggestion that my grief wasn't about me was ridiculous. It is literally all about me because it's my grief caused by a traumatic loss. I didn't ask them to clarify. Given the context of these conversations and the backgrounds of the people who said that, I knew that they had no interest in hearing my perspective or reaction anyway. So why do I think this was such an unhelpful thing to say? First, the advice completely decentered me, the person dealing with the aftermath of trauma in real time. Instead of asking how they could help me, the advice givers projected onto me their belief that I should be the helper, which disregards my need to focus 100% of my energy and resources on my well-being. Now, there are people who have famously alchemized their pain for the greater good shortly after experiencing a traumatic loss. But trauma survivors should neither be asked nor expected to do that. Next, the line of thinking that informs this advice robs the trauma survivor of his or her agency in a process called meaning making. Meaning making after trauma describes the cognitive and emotional process of integrating a new traumatic event into one's life story by redefining beliefs, goals, and values to find new meaning and promote healing. I'll share with you 4 examples of meaning making. First, reframing your experience. You actively work to understand how the trauma has shaped you, both in terms of challenges and new strengths, if any. Second, altering beliefs and goals. The traumatic event can lead either to a change in how you view the world or a revision of your life goals to better align with your new understanding of yourself and reality. Third, finding healthy or unhealthy meanings. The outcome can be negative or positive, such as having a belief that life is precious and I should make the most of my own. And fourth, healing and integration. This is a crucial step in the healing process, helping to reintegrate the emotional, cognitive, and somatic parts of yourself that may have been separated by the trauma. Somatic comes from the Greek word soma, which means body. I want to pause here and talk about separation for just a second. I'm going to read from a book entitled Homecoming, written by Dr. Tama Bryant. Dr. Tama is a self-described womanist psychologist and minister who centers the voices of Black women and others who have been marginalized. Let's see what Dr. Tama has to say about separation. The stress and traumas of life may have disconnected you from your own sense of self, your confidence, and even your thoughts and feelings. As you heal and grow, you get to a place of appreciating and honoring yourself in mind, body, heart, and spirit. Now let's talk about what meaning making is not. It is not telling someone everything happens for a reason. It is not God has a plan. It is not about finding a positive or beneficial meaning. We are not engaging in toxic positivity, which refers to feeling pressure to maintain a positive mindset. The idea that I can find something positive about my brother's homicide is so ridiculous and insulting. Trauma survivors are the only ones who determine if and how they participate in the meaning-making process. And the final reason why this advice was unhelpful, this line of thinking is so pernicious. It might actually encourage a trauma survivor to stop focusing on himself. The subtext in that advice is, yeah, you're going through it right now, but think of how this will help so many people later. The question that a homicide survivor should ask himself, especially during the early years of grief, is, what do I need to get through this? It is not, how can this help others? As someone who is 27 years into my grief journey, I have gone through my own meaning-making process. I now have the wherewithal to talk about my experience and offer assistance to others who have experienced loss by homicide. But it's unfair to expect me to do that as a young adult in my early 20s, a few years after my brother's death. People are going to give you advice that feels absolutely off base, uninformed, or offensive, or all of the above. You do not need to accept it. You can reject it, and you have no obligation to tell them that. Commit to using every bit of your energy to healing the emotional, physical, and psychological wounds caused by trauma. Your healing matters more than anyone's advice about what you should do with your pain. Before we close, I want to have a moment of silence for anyone who is mourning the recent death of a loved one to homicide, anyone observing the anniversary of a loved one's death, or navigating holidays and or the birthday of a departed loved one. May you find peace. May you find compassion. Thanks for listening. If you found this helpful, subscribe to the podcast on iHeartRadio and Spotify and share with your friends. Until next time.